I always thought it was funny how judgmental and have so much shame and guilt towards ourselves just when we make mistakes. And if a person we knew has done the same thing, we wouldn't even have any of those emotions towards them. Why do we feel such shame, such hatred, such low self-worth when it comes to us, when it comes to making mistakes? As I talk in all of my videos and thing on how you grew up, a lot of us have grew up with strict parents, with strict environments where our parents might have wanted to project their own performance, their own needs that maybe they hadn't met onto us so that they can be proud of us, so that we can succeed. I don't believe that most parents that tell their children to act a certain way, to perform well, to have a lot of good grades and put a lot of pressure onto their children, doing it for bad intentions. In the contrary, they might not even realize how negative it impacts their children, actually later on. So most of us grew up in those environments where it was strict, where we had to perform in almost everything. We had to have certain grades at school, and if we didn't have them, we might have been punished. So over time, when you as a human being, when you're older and you make mistakes, do you remember? You remember the shame, the guilt, the performance you had upon your shoulders. Even if you're alone, your brain and your nervous system doesn't think that it's safe to make mistakes. It shuts down, so it puts certain patterns, certain mechanism. It makes you be a perfectionist, and this over time affects you and impacts you. Why? Because it seems like it's just, oh yeah, I don't accept myself when it comes to mistake. This is a big sign that you won't ever accept who you are as a human being, because part of accepting ourselves is understanding we make mistakes, is understanding our shadow, our good parts, and all of the bad patterns and the good patterns of ourselves. And it's deciding to accept all of those parts of ourselves, not just when you perform and you have a good grade at school, because your worth, human, was never based on your performance. You are born naked out of our mother's womb. That's it. You weren't born immediately going to school and having to have those grades and having to perform super well at a sport. Our worth was never about our performance. It's just about us as being a human being. That's what you need to get in touch with, is understanding your worth as a human being just by simply existing, because that's how you're going to make peace with making mistakes and with accepting all of who you are. There's balance. Outside, there's good days, there's bad days. People are more privileged, other people are less privileged. Life is not perfect. You'll never be perfect. You cannot base your worth on your performance, on never making mistakes. Because one thing I have learned from being a perfectionist myself in the past is that perfectionism, it seems good on paper. It's like, oh yeah, there are the people that strive to be the best in everything they do. But it's self-sabotage in disguise, because it's you trying to control everything you're doing, having it perfectly. But over time, this destroys you, because you're not letting yourself live. You're not letting yourself live. You're just focusing on control, on perfection, which you will never get, which after makes you feel worse within yourself, which makes you have to continue again and again and again. And perfectionism makes you feel satisfied within yourself. You feel satisfied within yourself because you always think you can do better. And so perfectionism is a curse. Focus on myself, but I also let myself have fun. Because that's the whole point of living. You are not meant to live in a direction where you're always perfect. You're always performing. How are you going to be happy? You're not going to be happy. You cannot dictate your worthiness on your work, everything on your work, on how well you are doing. Live. That's how you're going to get happy. Live. Do what makes you happy. Spend time with yourself. Let's talk now about trauma responses to mistakes. So there is perfectionism, the fun response. You must be perfect to be safe or loved. Mistakes feels as if you are failing someone. So fear of abandonment, low self-worth, saying your truth so that people can stay, so that you don't take up much space, so that people don't have negative things to say about you. Perfectionism always comes from if your parents put a lot of pressure onto you and it wasn't safe to make mistakes. Now you have to understand how to help yourself feel safe through making mistakes. Understand it never came from you. That's the thing, is that our perception of ourselves, until we heal it, isn't about us. It's just a survival mechanism, a survival mode we put to protect ourselves from the things we don't want to experience again. That's how deeply we get traumatized. That's how deeply we have traumas and we have patterns. And that's why it's so important to understand all of your patterns, your shadow. I know that a lot of people, basically your shadow is like the bad part of who you are. And maybe you might be a really envious person. You might be a really jealous person. The moment you welcome your shadow, and it might be even worse things, okay? But you shouldn't feel ashamed of your shadow, because we all have it. You should instead welcomize it. Why? Because your shadow is a nice thing, because it's all of the answers towards what you don't believe you could be, towards how you can heal those things. Like for example, you're a really envious person because maybe you deep down don't have enough self-belief to think you could be that person. Maybe because you don't ever think you could do those actions, you could perform that well. See, your shadow is an amazing tool for self-discovery, and that is why it's so important to heal. It's so important to understand yourself as a person. In the society, we always show ourselves at our best selves. So of course, when you realize you have a shadow, you're like, yeah, well, maybe I'm not going to look at it, because we don't talk about it in the society. We don't talk about it. And since we all have the mask, when we go outside, we all act a certain way, we all act the perfect, the curated self. After, when we understand we have the shadow, we feel ashamed of it because we think it's not normal. But let me tell you, everyone has it, and the moment you welcome it is the moment you alchemize your pain into power. Why? Because these are all your insecurities. But when you understand your insecurities, you can implement action, turn your insecurities into a strength, into a person you could be. I used to have certain aspects in my shadows that now I don't have. Why? Because I understood them and I alchemized them into myself, so I don't feel, for example, envious, jealous. That's the same thing that could happen to you, and it's the best thing you can do for your growth, for your strength, and for evolving as a person. Because you should never let your ego interfere with I'm already perfect the way I am, because I'm telling you, you're fucking not. Like we are not. I'm telling you, we are not. But the way that you can get kind of to the perfect self is by welcoming your shadow, is understanding all of the bad parts of who you are and all of the good parts, but mostly the bad parts, because this is what makes you improve. And after, of course, you're never perfect, but I'm telling you, this builds your character to a level that most people will never get. Seriously empowering and powerful, because you have to understand that our traumas, how we have been impacted, really shapes our mindset, really shapes our projection, our actions outside in the world. And when you understand all of your background experience, all of what made you who you are, unbreakable, because you're gonna ultimately know what influenced you and what stopped you from making certain actions, what stopped you from doing certain things in the future. And when you heal those things, you become whoever you want to be. You become whoever you want to be. Because you are not stopped anymore by your limiting beliefs, by your patterns, by your traumas. Decided to put in the work and understand yourself. That is why your shadow, all of the bad parts of who you are, I'm telling you, don't be ashamed of them. Don't be ashamed of them, because they all reflect something deep down in yourself. Low self-worth, fear of abandonment, need of validation, acceptance. And the moment you understand it, you work with it, you become unstoppable. The flight response. Hyperactivation. Your brain views mistakes as a life-threatening crisis. You will rush into a state of panic, of fixing, of changing whenever you make a mistake. Once again, this comes from the fact that probably maybe you were getting punished when you were making mistakes. You didn't have your iPhone. You couldn't have dinner with the family. I don't know. But what does this make you after? It makes your brain and your nervous system into survival mode, because you've understood that making mistakes is going to lead to a consequence, which then interferes with how safe it is to make mistakes. The freeze response. Mistakes triggers deep shame into your nervous system that will shut down and make you feel numb, helpless, unable to take action. If you've been shamed from making mistakes, this makes your nervous system unable after to take action, to think clearly, because it's scared. It's going to feel the same repressed emotions, the same things that they got told that they don't want to hear again. And this makes you feel scared that if you take another action and you make a mistake, you're going to get shamed, get guilt tripped, get all of the emotions that makes you feel unsafe. So it's really deeper than we think how this all affects us. And also it's a way of protecting yourself. So if I don't feel my emotions, if I shut myself down, I'm not going to be able to make any mistakes, because I'm not even implementing to take the action to make mistakes. So it's really, really deep, and it's really, really sad when you think of it, because we should be safe to make mistakes. No one should ever feel that way towards making mistakes, because that's not healthy. That's not healthy, and your nervous system should know that it's okay, and that's how we are going to retrain it today. But just know that this is not normal and this shouldn't happen to you. The fight response. You turn your anger inward, and before anyone else can criticize you, you're going to do it to yourself. You're going to be mean to yourself. You're going to say harsh things to yourself. Why? Because when you have been in an environment where you have so much pressure around making mistakes, what does this teach you about who you are as a human being? It teaches you that your worth is based on your performance. And when, for example, you make mistakes, when over time you're burned out from all of the performance you have to make, this makes you hate on yourself, not because you want it, but because this is the environment that made you feel that way towards yourself. You believe that there's a problem with you because you maybe didn't have the certain grade your parent hoped for, because you made a mistake, because you think you're underachieving, you think you're not performing well enough, you think you're not good enough. This is not true. This is not true. And your internal voice of hate is all of the anxiety and stress that you have upon your shoulders that is trying to be expressed in a certain way. And it's really sad, because this just makes you feel worse within yourself, and this stops you from accepting yourself. And I'm not blaming you, but when you have so much anger towards yourself, it's really just because someone else has made you see yourself that way, has made you really put your worth onto your performance and onto how good you are at something, when in fact you are good as just being a human being, as simply existing. Conditional love. Praised for your achievements, but never for who you are. This teaches you that you'll only be loved if you perform a certain way, if you do a certain thing. Internalized critical voice. This might come from a caregiver, from a parent, from a teacher. This might not even come about who you are, but for example, even if you made mistakes, as I said earlier, you have the fight response where your anger is turning inward. Maybe your parents were telling you you're not good enough. Why don't you ever succeed? Why don't you perform well enough? What does this teach you? It teaches your inner child that you're nothing, you're no good, you're never capable of performing well, and you're such a bad person, and shame on you. How does this make you feel within yourself after? We have a lot of limiting beliefs from our experiences. So imagine if someone over time repeated those things to you over and over and over again. This impacts you in your way of seeing yourself. Everything impacts us in our way of seeing ourselves, depending on how we grew up and what we went through. Traumatic predictability. If you are in unpredictable, abusive relationships, environments, being perfect is a way of stopping yourself from having anything bad happen to you, from having any conflict, from having any argument, from having anything bad, and that makes you feel safe in your way of being where you are. I'm gonna be perfect. I'm not gonna ask for anything. I'm gonna rely on myself, and everything should be okay. But that shouldn't be like this, because as a child, if you have parents, they should take care of you. You should not be the person taking care of yourself, and you should feel safe being a human, being a child, because we are not meant to perform and to be perfect. And most of the time, if your parents had this projection onto you that they wanted you to be that way, it's because they probably have never been that person and they wanted you to become the person they would be proud of. But one thing one of my parents told me is that parents often think their children are going to be like them, but no, in the contrary, what you end up realizing is that they're different than you, and that's what you have to accept as a parent, is that they're not going to be like you, and that's okay, because they are here on this planet to discover themselves. They are here on this planet to discover who they are, what they want, their passions, their interests. And also, if you have identity confusion, you're going to confuse what you did in terms of who you are as a person and how much you're capable of. So if you over time make mistakes, you're going to think it's in terms of your performance, of your achievements, of how good you are at getting at your goals, when in fact, your identity, like who you are, is not your action, becomes who you are at the end of the day. The more you repeat an action, the more you work out, the more you eat healthy, of course it shapes who you are, but your identity is your soul, is your quality, is your strengths, is your flaws. That's your identity. That's not your performance or your goals or anything outside of yourself. Your identity is who you are inside yourself. What do you think of yourself? What has shaped you as a child, and why do you think that way of yourself? How can you shape your identity into making your inner child feel safe and into loving yourself? Because that's your identity. That's what it's about. It's about yourself only. It's not about anything external. And that's why I was saying your worth is not your performance. Your worth is yourself already. We all have strengths. I personally love to nurture people and be there for people. What is your strength that you can embrace, that you can understand? I'm telling you, the moment you understand your strength, how you've been impacted, how you've been shaped, your flaws, you can use them to your advantage, to grow, to even for your future path. You're probably gonna end up doing something with your biggest strength, with the biggest thing that you love to do for other people. I don't know what is it. For me, it's nurturing people. For you, it might be something else. So your identity is not outside of yourself, it's inside yourself. And what made you special as a human being unto this earth? Because we are all unique for a reason. So what made you unique? How to heal your way of viewing your mistake. You have to reflect first on what made you feel unsafe making mistakes. Why do you judge yourself so harshly when you make mistakes? Would you judge your friend or a family member the same way? Where is it coming from? Is it something that someone has told you over and over again? Is it the environment you grew up in where you always had to perform? If not, you weren't getting. You know certain people that if they did not perform well, they couldn't be with their family. They couldn't have the events that they were meant to have just because they didn't do certain things. When you understand it, that's when you have the ability to understand that it's not unsafe. It's just an experience that made you feel unsafe. And over time, when you make mistakes, you try to retrain your nervous system to show that it's safe, to get conscious. Okay, it feels unsafe because this happened to me and this has impacted me in this sort of way. Now, what can I do to show myself it's safe? I can take some time, I can reflect, I can understand I'm human. It's normal to make mistakes, and what can I learn from my mistake instead of beating myself up for it? Because one thing that might help you is that we don't have control on everything. One of the difficulties with perfectionism, with not wanting to make mistakes, is that we want to control everything. The moment you free yourself from understanding you only have control on yourself, sometimes things are not going to end up like you would have wanted them to be. You free yourself from the expectation of always having everything perfectly, of never making mistakes, and of understanding you're a human being, because it's part of life. And this is a lesson I had to learn myself. And honestly, over time it gets better when you realize it's not unsafe. And because the thing is, when you welcome yourself of shame and guilt and hate when you make mistakes, over time you end up nurturing a safe space towards yourself that you never had in the past. And that's what makes me now in a place where it's easier for me to integrate this lesson, because I'm telling you, the moment you're going to make yourself feel safe, to understand that it's safe to make mistakes and it happens and you cannot control everything, the moment you become happier and you make peace with what you have went through, with your patterns, with your perfection, even if it's not perfect. I now decide and let myself live, because I'm not supposed to have everything, to control everything, to be perfect in everything, because it's not possible. And over time, this leads you to outrageous consequences, which I even had this year. This year, I have a lot of lessons to learn, but this made me in a place where I can now be at peace with myself, and that's what I want for you guys as well. And that's why it's a beautiful thing to retrain your nervous system and make yourself feel safe when you make mistakes. Now, your mistakes are there to teach you to grow, to learn, and to build your character. Without your mistakes, you wouldn't be where you are today. Your mistakes are lessons. They are nothing bad to fear or to judge, because we all make them, and they are there for a reason, because without them you would not even grow as a person. Every time you make a mistake, see it from a place of what is the lesson. Now, okay, I made a mistake in my exam. Now, maybe I should have studied this part more. Okay, you're never gonna have everything perfect, but they teach you what you can improve, and that's the only thing you should strive for. Not how badly you have done, because that's not what matters. What matters is what you can learn from this mistake. Yourself feel safe, because you are your own priority, you are your own best friend. No one is gonna take care of you as much as yourself. Why you should strive to welcome yourself with peace, with acceptance, and no judgment. No judgment. Because you are by your side until you die, and you deserve to accept and love yourself. Your internal dialogue. Decatastrophize the outcome, rewrite your purpose of mistake, and calm your nervous system first. Whenever you make a mistake, really try to understand if it's really that bad, or if it's really something that just happened and that you can move forward with having a greater perspective on what to do next. Because most of the time, if it wasn't safe for you to make mistakes as a child, your brain is in survival mode, your nervous system is in survival mode, so it's not thinking with its logic, it's just thinking with in survival. Okay, now what can I do? I cannot make mistakes, I have to do this quick. But when you decatastrophize the outcome and you really look at the broader perspective, you take a break. Okay, first you retrain your nervous system. What does this mean? You understand that your performance is not based on you. Your identity is who you are. Bigger outcome of what it is. And is it really that bad, or is it really just something that happens to the best of us and we can move forward with it in the next day? Because sometimes anxiety really makes us exaggerate what we go through, especially if it's something that was never safe for you. Realize it's just a mistake like anyone else. You retrain your nervous system first to think that it's safe, because you take the time to show yourself it's safe and you don't rush in survival mode into fixing, into doing anything. You're just letting yourself absorb, think, and after act. That's how you're going to retrain your nervous system to feel safe and really understand that it should have never made you feel this unsafe and this much in survival mode, because as I said earlier, mistakes are just mistakes. At the end of the day, they're part of who we are. So it's easier to not judge yourself so harshly, to not hate on yourself so harshly, because you see them from the good positive impact that they give you, which is what we should look at everything in life. One of the best advice I can give is to always have a positive outlook in life. And this doesn't mean that if you want to cry, if you're angry, to not have those emotions. It's after you process those emotions, you understand why it's positive to you. That's one of the best ways that you're going to grow, you're going to learn, and you're going to evolve as a human being on this earth, because you're always going to see the lesson, the teaching in whatever you're going through, and training it so you can after welcome, accept yourself, and make peace with what was never in peace with yourself. I hope this video helped you understand how to welcome yourself with compassion and love whenever you make a mistake. Because if you wouldn't judge a friend or relative for making the same mistakes as you do, this is teaching you one thing: that you shouldn't judge yourself the same way that you wouldn't judge them, and that it's part of an unhealed circumstances that has made you see yourself this way. Never about the mistake itself, it was about the circumstances that has taught you to think that way about yourself. And so if you guys want to leave any support, it would really be nice, because it always helps my community grow. If you have any questions, any DMs, any questions, any improvements you want me to make, let me know in the comments, let me know in DMs. I really hope you're gonna be kind to yourself this week. I really hope that that any of the tips that I gave you is gonna help you. On that, I love you all so much, my angels, and I will see you all in another video.